Okay, so what is a fronted adverbial? Now, fronted adverbial can sound a bit scary, but it is just a fancy name, okay? So it's nothing to be worried about. So I'm going to explain to you what that is now. So a fronted adverbial is just a word or a phrase. Remember, phrase means group of words. So it's a word or group of words that is placed at the start of a sentence, okay? So it's placed at the start. It gives us more information about the verb in the sentence, okay? So that's just the same as what adverbs do. Adverbs give us more information about the verb in the sentence, and so do fronted adverbials. Now, fronted adverbials are used to make sentences more exciting as you can change the way you start your sentences by using different fronted adverbials. So the two fronted adverbials that we're going to focus on today are the when and how often fronted adverbials. So I'm going to write a sentence about Mr. Butler, our boring character here. Okay, and I'm going to include a fronted adverbial. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so you can see. Okay, so we're going to start with our when fronted adverbial. So remember, the information at the start of the sentence is going to tell us when the verb is happening. Okay, so I think I'm going to have on Tuesdays. So I'm going to start with my capital because it's the start of my sentence. And I'm going to put a capital for Tuesdays as well because that is the name of the day of the week. That's the proper noun. Now, that's my fronted adverbial there on Tuesdays. Okay, so once I finish writing the fronted adverbial part of my sentence, I then punctuate it with a comma. Okay, so I've got on Tuesdays, space, Mr. Butler. Remember to put capitals for Mr. and Butler because that's all part of his official name. Worked at the toothpaste toothpaste tube factory, and then my full stop at the end. Okay, so you can quite clearly see here that this is the fronted adverbial. So it gives us more information about the verb that follows in the sentence. So I know that the verb is worked. Okay, so that's what he was doing. That's the verb. So my fronted adverbial tells us that he was working on Tuesdays. Okay, try to think of front to help you remember that it goes at the start. A fronted adverbial goes at the start of a sentence. Okay, I'll show you one more example. So we're going to think of a how often sentence now that has a fronted adverbial at the start. I'll make that bigger again to make sure everyone can see. Okay. So this time I think I'm going to use the fronted adverbial occasionally because that tells us how often. But it's not very often. Occasionally. Now that's the end of my fronted adverbial, so I am going to punctuate it with a comma, then leave a space. So we've got occasionally, Mr. Butler talked to the shopkeeper when he paid for his newspaper. And then a full stop at the end because it is still a sentence. Okay, so the fronted adverbial in this sentence would be occasionally because that gives us more detail, more information about the verb in the sentence. So we know that the verb is talked. Okay, it's important to know that there can be other verbs in the sentence. Okay, so like paid is a verb as well, but we know it's quite obvious that occasionally Mr. Butler talked. So we know that occasionally is describing the talked verb, okay? So it's the first verb to follow the fronted adverbial. So occasionally is giving us more information about the first verb that you come to in the sentence, which is talked.